What is curriculum? We have explored this question before in previous modules. The question is, has your definition of curriculum changed now that you've applied more intentional skills in your classroom? Curriculum begins with the children as they learn through relationships and experiences that integrate physical, social, and cognitive development. Development takes place across all domains and in the context of relationships. Adults plan intentional curriculum that is content-driven and emphasizes activities and experiences that encourage children to use their skills and capabilities, as well as challenge them to learn new concepts and try something that is just beyond their present level. A playful curriculum happens with intentionality and includes plenty of scaffolding. A quick refresher on observational assessment. Observational assessment is ongoing, it is embedded in all of the daily activities and routines, and it is documented. Observational assessment is not screening or evaluating. Observational assessment leads the way to planning the curriculum and to setting goals. Let's take a look at the New Mexico ELG's infant and toddler domains. If you work with infants and toddlers, you are probably pretty familiar with these by now. In your New Mexico ELG's book, the infant-toddler domains begin on page 30 and continue through page 53. The infant and toddler introduction begins on page 18. Let's look at the age spans for infants and toddlers found in the ELGs. The age spans found in the indicators include young infants, birth to 8 months, mobile infants, 6 months to 18 months, young toddlers, 16 to 24 months, older toddlers, 24 to 36 months. As I'm sure that many of you have noticed, there are overlapping groupings of ages. For example, a 6-month-old could be considered a young infant or a mobile infant. These overlapping groupings of ages reflect the individual differences in children as well as current research in typical growth and development of young children. These groupings reflect general milestones in motor development and other developmental stages. What is a domain? A domain describes a broad area of development that are true generally for children regardless of ethnicity, language, religion, or any other experiential or environmental experience. A domain reflects universal aspects of children's development. Let's review the ELG's domains and components for infants and toddlers. There are 5 domains and 14 components. The domains include beginning to know about ourselves and others, beginning to communicate, beginning to build concepts, beginning to move and do, and approaches to learning. The 3 STAR requirements for focus and documentation include beginning to know about ourselves and others, beginning to communicate, and beginning to move and do. 4 STAR requirements for documentation add the domain beginning to build concepts. Please note that the 14 components associated with the 5 infant-toddler domains are continuously numbered. For example, the first component of domain number 2 is component number 5, listening and understanding. The component numbering doesn't start again with each domain. Let's look at the domain component and indicators in a different way. This example shows domain 3, beginning to build concepts. This graphic shows how the domain is the foundation, the broad category of development. As we move up, we get into the more specific components. And finally to the indicators, which are specific observable behaviors a child does, which are divided by age span. Here's a domain vignette from the New Mexico Early Learning Guidelines. This domain vignette is meant to illustrate the particular domain. This example is found on page 44 of the New Mexico ELGs, and other domain vignettes are found throughout the document as well. When reading a domain vignette, read the domain number and title, then the domain description, and finally the domain vignette. Continuing with the domain beginning to build concepts as an example, this is page 45 of the New Mexico Early Learning Guidelines. It shows the components associated with the domain. Notice the left-hand side of the page with when you are observing and keep in mind. Both offer helpful information and different versions can be found throughout the ELGs. Component 8 is exploration and discovery. The infant or toddler inquires about the world and experiences the properties of things. The indicators are below the component and separated by age span. Remember that there is some purposeful overlap of age spans in the indicators. Indicators are on a continuum and proceed through the age groups. For example, the statement under young infants explores attributes of materials, continues to explore sizes and shapes under mobile infants. 2. Notices how items are the same and different under young toddlers. 2. Notices and describes how items are the same and different in the older toddler indicator. Domain 3, Component 9 is concept development and memory. The infant or toddler understands cause and effect, the permanence of things, and beginning numeracy concepts. Below are the indicators separated by age spans. On the next page is Component 10 from Domain 3. Problem solving and use of symbols. The infant or toddler finds solutions and represents thoughts and feelings in creative ways. Again, the indicators by age span are below. Here is the portfolio collection form used for infants and toddlers. Remember to fill out the form completely and be objective, be sure that you have matched to the appropriate component and indicator, and give sufficient detail in the anecdotal notes. Let's review the ELG's domains and components for infants and toddlers. There are 5 domains and 14 components. The domains include beginning to know about ourselves and others, beginning to communicate, beginning to build concepts, beginning to move and do, and approaches to learning. The 3-star requirements for focus in documentation include beginning to know about ourselves and others, beginning to communicate, and beginning to move and do. 4-star requirements for documentation add the domain approaches to learning. Please note that the 14 components associated with the 5 infant and toddler domains are continuously numbered. For example, the first component of domain number 2 is component 5.